Hey there, and welcome to the ADK channel. I, of course, am Dave, and with me today is Kirk. And unfortunately, there is no Andy. He is tied up on other projects. But we have with us Dan from the wonderful band Raze. Welcome to the channel.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
I always do the round of applause.
Yes, big round of applause.
The underrated round of applause.
God, dude, I'll put large applauses over it. Yes, thank you for joining us on the channel. We obviously going to talk a little bit more about Raze's plans for the future, but we need to get a little bit of background about the band. So, want to kick straight in with some questions. Really, first question, always worth finding out about, is band name, Raze. What's the reason behind the band name? Where did it come from? Who came up with it? Tell us a little bit about
that. So we get asked this quite a lot, and I feel like the answer always changes. But I suppose the way I put it is, obviously Raze means, destruction. To raise something, you destroy something. And I suppose when Louis came up with that name, he thought it sounded cool. Plus, it's quick, it's catchy, it's easy to remember, I suppose.
Yeah, fair enough. We've had some amazing answers. We've had some bog standard answers. We've had good answer. So that's a good answer. You actually have a background. We had one band, and it was my favourite one was we had band Junction 28.
Oh yeah,
who are from Essex, and it was only when I read that they were from Essex, and I was like, "Hang on, M25. Oh, it's the turn off for Essex on the M25." And they're like, "Yeah, that's where our rehearsal room is." And I was like, "All right, okay, fair enough. Good answer." Can you tell us a little bit about how the band actually came together then? So there has been some lineup changes. So
yes.
From the starting of the band to the lineup changes, if you could, to date, if you could take us through how organically it has evolved.
Yeah, sure. So obviously before I joined, Raze was a 4-piece with Louis, guy called Ethan on guitar, obviously Ethan now on the drums, and Ashley, the former bassist. I'm not sure who the lineup members were originally, but basically the band was always a 4-piece. And then when I joined on the same day, a guy called James O'Connor rehearsed at the same time. So he rehearsed before I sort of went into the room to do my audition. And and then from then on, me and James both got the part for guitar for the band. So from then on, it's basically just been a 5-piece, and then the lineup sort of changed since then. So now we've got Sam Truman on the bass and Jack Ilott on the other guitar.
Okay. Kirk, you had some questions, didn't you?
Yeah, just on that, Dan, one thing that always strikes me about Raze, it's a very slick professional operation. And I suppose you've just confirmed that. Look at that, two new guitarists audition on the same day. And we know obviously that Louis, and I think his father's involved, isn't it, with One Eyed Toad Records, so they've gone into PR and also releasing music via artists as well. So what bands were you in before this? What kind of music were you playing before you joined the metallic grunge type approach that we hear through Raze?
Yeah, sure. So before I joined Raze, I wasn't in any bands. It was literally Raze was my first experience actually performing live. So obviously I started picking up the guitar when I was sort of 15, 16. I was playing guitar before then, but sort of when I was 15, 16, that's when I sort of started taking it a bit more seriously. And then I was looking on a website called Join My Band, and obviously Raze was advertising on there. And I'd actually put a profile out basically saying what sort of bands I was looking for. And it was Louis that messaged me saying, oh hi, I've got this band called Raze, check us out on SoundCloud. They had like a little sort of live rehearsal type thing that I had to listen to. I thought it sounded good, so I came down and did a practice with them, did an audition with them. And basically the next day, Louis messaged me saying, how do you feel about having 2 guitarists in the band? I said, yeah, it's always great having 2 guitarists, because when one guitarist is doing the lead part, or say 2 guitars want to do something different at the same time, it adds a bit more depth to the band and it makes the sound bigger, I think.
So did you join after the 2017 EP?
I joined before then, so that's basically when I joined, that's what we were working towards. They had those 5 songs from the EP, and they wanted to get them recorded and get some music sort of put out there.
I love the title of it, Falling Apart, because the lineup is falling
yeah,
apart.
that's exactly it. Yeah, that's why we did it. So the band sort of fell apart a bit and then sort of joined back together, I suppose.
Strong EP, that, isn't it? I mean, so am I right in thinking that all those songs were already written, and then you obviously just came in as a musician and recorded the parts at the time? So on that EP, do you know when Raze play live and you and the other guitarists have that trade-off? You always do it, I think, as your penultimate song in the set, and you're doing like a lead guitar trade-off. What is that song? What's it called?
So that's called Again, and that's going to be on our upcoming album. And basically, that was a song that was written by James O'Connor, the former guitarist. And he thought it'd be cool to have that sort of guitar part. It kind of gives us something, special for the set. Some people look forward to the dual guitar part, especially the guitarists in the crowd who can appreciate it.
Yeah, it's like a ritual moment. I've heard it 3 times, that moment, and I'm building up and thinking, here it comes. Are you one of you is playing like these really technical pinch harmonic type passages, and then the other one is doing I think C major scales, absolutely shredding them. Which one are you doing? Just remind me.
So I usually start off the solo bit. So I'm more of a bluesy player. So I suppose I'm not sure, but I'm more doing like the sort of legato type things, and Jack's doing some quick sort of picked parts and also a bit of legato as well. It's a bit of like a question and answer sort of thing. So I do the first leg and he sort of responds to that. Conversation
between 2 guitarists, you're right, the legato. It's like the equivalent of, when you're writing a sentence, you put the 3 dots at the end of the sentence, an ellipsis. Yeah, that's how you're ending the solos to move the conversation on. But for the benefit of our viewers, I think I should say, obviously, you're not, obviously there's shredding in there, but you're not like a Van Halen type band. There's like a 90s drop tune element to it, really strong vocals, which, baritone, and you probably associate with your likes of Eddie Vedder and Scott Weiland, and Scott Stapp, but the guitar tone is hostile. It's very, very heavy, isn't it? It is a metallic interpretation of that classic 90s grunge era. So when you go on that website and then what is it called? Find my band. I always forget the name of this.
Join My Band. Yeah.
Join My Band. What were you looking for? What kind of influences were you looking for in a band to join, and what was Louis looking for when he got back to you?
So when I sort of joined, there was still sort of in that sort of heavy grunge sort of genre, and I was looking for more sort of metal, heavy metal sort of sound, a bit like Alter Bridge, which is one of my biggest influences. I love their sort of riffs because they're heavy and they're melodic as well, and that's the sort of thing that I was looking for. And then since I've joined, and since obviously Jack's joined and Sam, the new bassist, has joined, we've sort of we've developed that sound from that heavy grunge to more of we call it I suppose metallic grunge. It's got that grungy element, but it's also got that heavy metal element and a melodic sort of groove metal element as well.
Yeah, you're right, because Dave, Andy and I, we reviewed the Alter Bridge album. We were unanimous, weren't we? We really enjoyed it, and the first 3 tracks, I mean, on that album, you could be listening to a Gojira album. The riffs are so heavy,
really heavy.
And that's why when that song that obviously is not on the 2017 EP that I remember, that's got some real crunch to it, and almost a really like eviscerating deathcore vocal in the harsher moments as well, which when I first heard it took me by surprise. It's like, wow, you've just gone from Eddie Vedder to someone like the singer from Whitechapel in one song. So can we expect more of that, the good cop bad cop type vocal approach in the new material?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're trying to do. We didn't want this new material to be all sort of shouty, screamy stuff. We wanted some melodic parts as well, and Louis is really good with that with his vocals. He can sort of do the soft melodic singing, but at the same time he's got some brutal screams for the heavier bits. And we wanted a sort of a diverse sound, so it'll kind of cater to a lot of people. Some people don't like the shouty stuff. When I first joined Raze, I wasn't too keen on the screamy, shouty stuff. obviously now I've been in the band for so long, my taste in music's changed quite a bit. I quite like that now, but I can understand that some people don't like that. So there are some songs that we play where there's not a lot of screaming. There's some songs where there's quite a lot of screaming, and there's some songs that kind of take both and have their own sort of elements in it. There's a bit of sort of screaming, there's a bit of that melodic singing as well.
Yeah, that seems to be the challenge now. Dave, I'd be interested in your opinion on this. So few metal bands actually have the confidence to sing these days. And like when you hear, especially the one genre I think that really has just become sterile now, and there's probably been like that for 10 years, is metalcore when you listen to it. Because I think what went wrong with that genre, it started off really well, heavy. It still had like a hardcore punk element to it, but they were playing Slayer riffs. And I think in the early 2000s, when you had that new wave of American heavy metal, some good bands came from that. Trivium, obviously, being the main band from that era. But then as soon as metalcore started incorporating like that melodic post-hardcore pop punk vocal, I just think it went backwards. Whereas if you listen to Raze, you're going back to the era of the greatest singers of modern rock. You Lane Staley's, Eddie Vedder's, Chris Cornell, really distinctive voices. And Alter Bridge are one of the few bands that has still got the courage to do that. Because I just think now that there are so many bands that are using the screaming technique and it doesn't even sound extreme. They're not doing anything wrong. It's just almost become predictable. So yeah, I guess getting that ratio and bringing it back is actually quite a courageous thing to do, isn't it, in the modern scene?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like a lot of bands are starting to sound similar to each other, and that's what we're trying to break out. We want to sound different. We want to have a unique sound. We want to have like a sound signature that everyone can recognize. And it's difficult coming up with a new sound when you're following the formula of a lot of new music, which I feel like a lot of bands are doing recently. So that's why we're sort of doing that mix between the melodic soft vocals with the screamy stuff, because it's not that common at the moment. Like it used to be sort of back, like you're saying, like the late 90s, early 2000s, but that's kind of died off a bit, and like you say, it's kind of gone backwards, and a lot of bands are doing more of just the screamy stuff or just the singing stuff. They're not sort of combining the two as much these days.
Yeah, I think what's unique to me grunge was my gateway into heavy music. It was Soundgarden, Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Smashing Pumpkins, bands like that. And even when you listen to that music now, even though some of the lyrics, well, most of the lyrics are quite dark and introspective, the vocals are very mature, aren't they? There's no traces of teenage angst in those vocals. And I think, especially with modern metal now, very few bands are able to really communicate a mature sense of sorrow where it doesn't sound like, let's be honest, a teenager in his bedroom, and then they'll go into these vocal spasms and screaming. And I think one of the few bands who do it well are Tesseract, the English prog metal band. But that's the thing. There's nothing about your music where you would think, oh, here we go, teenage angst, that anathema of heavy music. Because I think you're going back to that era that I grew up on and got into. Nostalgic for it. I think there's still a place for it. But like, what got you? What were the albums that were seminal for you? You're a 15-year-old, like you say, you start playing guitar seriously. What are you at the time?
Oh, well, yeah, like I say, my taste in music's changed so much since then. But I suppose one of my favourite bands back then was probably Ozzy. So yeah. I basically grew up with my dad's taste in music, and he was into more of like the older sort of anything from the 80s all the way to like the late 90s sort of stuff. And even his taste in music's changed since, and I feel like I've sort of influenced him into the heavier stuff since joining Raze. But yeah, Ozzy, even some of the grungy stuff like Pearl Jam and Soundgarden, and even like Audio Slave, and that sort of developed into slightly heavier bands as well, like Alter Bridge, and like from then Tremonti, and then my sort of taste in music just got gradually heavier and heavier.
Yeah, So before I hand you back over to Dave, I always like to ask this question. You're a guitarist in a metal band. Tell us something interesting about you that people would not expect or would associate with, a shredder in a metal band.
Oh, I don't even know how to answer that.
No censorship on this channel. You can tell us. No confidence.
I'm not going that deep. No. God, I'm not that interesting. Is the sad thing. I like music. I like playing music. That's about it. There's nothing really past that.
Nothing like have a degree in dance and ballet, which would be great, by the way. That would be interesting.
You know, you said that.
You once worked part-time as a lion tamer at a zoo, anything like that?
Nothing that interesting. From a job, I'm a web developer, which is probably one of the most boring things you could be. So, yeah. I suppose my spare time I do like photography and graphics design. That's interesting to you.
Would you be? Are you interested in doing the artwork for the new album?
Yeah. So actually, for the singles and the main album art, we commissioned this guy to do sort of like the main design. Basically, it's like a symbol of some sort. So the first single of the new album's been released, and it's like you can see it's like a swan that's sort of been highlighted from this symbol, so you can tell that there's other sort of like animals within this symbol. But yeah, when we got them back, we wanted to change them a bit, so I did a few little tweaks to sort of make it look a bit darker, a bit more sort of punchier. So yeah, I'm doing a bit of the artwork, so I'm not trying to get too involved because obviously it's a lot of time and I'm not amazing at graphics design. I'm kind of like intermediate when it comes to it. So like we usually get someone to do the main design, and then if it needs tweaks, I sort of step in and help.
Sounds good. Dave, over to you.
Okay. So before I get to the final two questions, I know Kirk's mentioned like grunge, and I don't hear grunge in Raze's sound. I've got to say my two sounds I would hear is definitely Tremonti Alter Bridge, but also System of a Down. I definitely hear a balance of that, especially with Lewis's switching vocals when he goes into his clean, and he likes to do very textured vocals. He likes to do very artistic vocals and to kind of take you in like this, rather than like clean lines. He likes to kind of bend those lines very much like a System of a Down vocal melody. And it was the first thing when we saw you guys in Metal to the Masses in your first heat last year. On one of the first, it was either the first or second song, and I'm going, that's a very System of a Downy vocal line. It's stuck with me since day one. That's one of the things, one of the kind of influences. I don't know if it is an influence for the band, but there is definitely some genetics of System of a Down in that in your DNA, if you like.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, we actually cover a System of a Down song in some of our sets. So if we're doing a longer set, we'll usually throw a couple covers in there, and one of them is Toxicity by System of a Down. So you're definitely right by saying that there's definitely an influence there. It's obviously come from one of the band members. I know Ethan's a big fan of them and Louis a fan of them, so right. Probably where the influence comes from.
So we talked a little bit about Kirk brought up about the dual guitar part, so I want to talk a little bit more about the bigger stage show, because one of the things I noticed going into last year's Metal to the Masses and a few other times where we've seen you at other venues and stuff like that is Raze puts on a consistent performance. There is definitely an element of stage show. There's an element of consistency in, when certain things like the dual guitar, the battle on the stage, and that Louis is going to come out and he's going to do this, and it's almost very much a staged, planned out theatrical performance. Like you all know your parts of what you're going to do. So when you're in the rehearsal studio, you've got a gig coming up. How much of the time in the rehearsal studio is spent setting this up and thinking about how you're going to perform, or is this very much a kind of last minute decision of how you're going to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like quite a lot of time's allocated to that. I mean, when we're jumping into the rehearsal studio, we want to, get set up as quickly as possible, and we want to run through the sets to make sure that we are absolutely confident with every song. And then if it's something like a big show like Metal to the Masses, we want to put on something extra for the audience. Like last year we had Louis' girlfriend, Jess, do the fire performance on the stage while we were playing. And there was just like that extra little element to kind of make us stand out a bit more. Obviously, we didn't want to make it the forefront because the forefront needed to be the music. But you know, yeah, we always come up with ideas and stuff to sort of boost our stage presence, our stage show, and our sound as well is just as important as all of that. Yeah, we do like to put quite a lot of focus on, you know, what we're going to do for that show.
Have you burnt any venues down yet with that fire performance yet?
Luckily not.
I think we were all very worried the first time she did it at Metal to the Masses. We're like, she's got fire. What the hell's going to happen? We have no idea what's going to happen right now.
It was quite
I was on stage.
meditative,
I was
wasn't it?
freaking out.
Yeah, because Louis had he was on one knee and he had his head bowed forward. It was meditational almost, isn't it? We were transfixed. Like, what's going to happen?
Fire on his back, and I don't know. I was like, what the hell?
Well, we hadn't rehearsed that. Obviously, Jess, Louis' girlfriend Jess, obviously he trusts her, and I was basically just putting all my trust into them, just thinking like, yeah, right, it's fine. Do the fire performance, just don't set us all alight when we're playing, please. For the love of God.
Next time we see Louis, he'll have no hair. It's all gone.
Yeah, should be bald next time. Yeah.
So I guess the final question from us is, it's 2023. We're a quarter of the way through the year already. But what's the plans for the band for the rest of this year?
Yeah, so we've got our album release later this year. We're hoping to release it sort of the year, maybe sort of June, July time. And yeah, at the moment we're releasing singles from the album. So at the end of this month, we're going to have the next single, which will be announced on social media soon. And yeah, just gigs. Obviously, we'll be doing gigs for the singles, and we'll do a tour as well for the album and the release show. And yeah, just, you know, keeping active, doing shows as much as possible, and yeah, promoting the new album that's coming out later this year.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
Can I just
thank you.
Sorry, do you know the album, when the album's released, what venues are you considering to do the album launch? Is it going to be in the southeast of England, do you think?
I think at the moment nothing's 100% confirmed, but it'll most likely be the southeast of London, somewhere fairly local where our main following is, just so it's, you know, it's easy for them to get to if they want to come.
Sounds good. Will we be invited?
Absolutely, yes. Please do come down.
That's what we like to hear.
Yes.
Well, just want to say a big thank you to you, Dan, from Raze. Obviously, myself and Kirk really appreciate the last sort of half an hour we've spent talking to you about the future. Best of luck with the album launch. We'll definitely be checking that out on the ADK channel when it comes out. And everyone, go check out Raze and make sure you follow them on Spotify and all the other Bandcamps and every other different platform that's out there, YouTube, etc. Yeah, and thank you very much for joining us on the ADK channel.
Cheers,
Thank you very much. Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks.